Shalom, everyone. We're reading Parashat Ki Tetsei, Deuteronomy 21 to 25. If you need to raise your hand or draw on the screen, here's how you can do it. Here is the first verse of the parasha. I'll read it. Ki Tetsei la milchama al oyevecha unetano Adonai Elohecha biyadecha vishavita shivyo. Okay, so this part of the Torah is talking about, if you have to go forth to war against your enemies and you are winning, and then in the following verses, we'll see what happens afterward. Anyway, Ki tetsei la milchama. How many different, well, no, let's start easy. No, let's not. How many definitions does the word ki have in Hebrew? This is a very versatile word, ki. We can see here that it might mean when, as in the case of, or in the case that, something that you'll eventually learn.
Thereof.
It can mean because.
Because.
In modern Hebrew, this is the most common word for because. Why did you do it? Ki, because.
How.
It can also, all right. I guess the answer I was looking for was content marker. What does that mean? If suppose I have a, I don't know, strange belief, and I say, I believe that, what is it I believe? Here it comes. The moon's made out of cheese. What a stupid thing to believe. Anyway, the content of my belief is the moon is made out of cheese. Okay, so when I'm saying this in Hebrew, I would say something like, I believe ki, and that says, oh, here comes the content of what it is that he said or thought or believed. We'll see it a lot in the Bible. And he said ki, oh, here's the content of what he said or what he thought. All right, so if we have a certain case or what's the word I'm looking for? A certain scenario, we will see the word ki and translate it as when. If we're explaining why something is, we'll see the word ki and it means because. And if we're representing the content of what someone thinks, feels, believes, or says, then we'll see ki. What's the root of tetsei?
Yatsa.
Very good. Yatsa. Yatsa is Yod Tzadi Aleph. It actually has an original Vav Tzadi Aleph, but we don't get to see the Yod or the Vav here. It goes missing. Essentially, we get to see this vowel change right here, representing a missing Yod. So what's the Tav at the beginning?
Yikton.
It's a Yiktol Tav U, 2MS. When you, Yatsa, go forth, well, actually, Yatsa is past tense, Tetsei, future, or whatever, incompleted. La milchama. Why is there a dagesh in this mem?
It's definite.
It's because of the definite article. Yeah. So let's break it down. What's lamed?
To the.
To, right? And then the definite article is going to be that patach in dagesh, which represents a missing ha. So laha becomes la. And then milchama, the root is lamed chet mem. Lechem, bread, right? Well, I'm not so sure about that. It looks the same, but I'm not so sure it's the same root. Milchama is war. Al oyevecha. An oyev is an enemy. Cha is yours. Why is the yod stuck in there?
Plural.
Plural. Absolutely.
Plural.
Netano. What is Natan?
To
give.
To give. So he gave. Nitano, this is a pronominal suffix. Gave what? Who? Or whom?
Your enemies.
You?
Apparently, well, this is
Your?
technically speaking, that's a 3ms, him.
Yes, yes.
And Natan is also a 3ms verb. He
Yes, yes.
did, he gave.
Mhm.
And then we've got an oo at the front representing and.
Mhm.
Maybe. Yes, maybe, possibly no. What could this vav represent besides the word and?
Then,
Vegetal, no.
Yeah, a conversive vav that actually
Yes.
flips the tense, right? So this could be Natano, he gave him, or this could be a flipping vav, a reversing vav, vekatal, whatever you want to call it, that turns it into he will give
Mhm.
him. No, okay, so the him here apparently refers to your enemies, and the
Mhm.
he who is doing the action of giving comes next, the Lord. So,
But
and
him
he,
is singular,
very good.
not plural.
That's right. And we'll see lots of disagreements like that in grammatically speaking in the Bible,
Mhm.
but who else could the O be referring to?
Yeah.
Well, if he gave him, it would have to be your enemy because the
Sorry, I
enemy.
pressed the wrong button and coughed into the microphone. He has delivered him, whoever the him is. Apparently, it's an enemy. The Lord has. The Lord who? Well, Elohecha, your God. Oh, look, there's a plural yod, right?
Mhm. But it's one God.
Yeah, of course. There's an exception
Yeah.
every turn you come across. So Elohim is treated like a singular, however, it's
Yes,
plural in
yes.
form. We'll call it the majestic plural or something, but it does have a yod there, and we're going to translate it singular because there's only one God. Beyadecha, be
It's
In your hand.
in
in
your hand. Yeah.
cha is yours and yad is hand. Beyadecha.
Yeah.
Veshavita. What's the root of this word?
Shin
Take.
bet yot.
Yeah,
Shav.
very good. It's actually Shin Bet Yod,
Oh, yes, yes. Okay.
which has to do with captivity,
Mhm.
to take captive. Ta means you did it. Vav at the front either means and or you will do it. All right.
Mhm.
And you will take, or and you will have taken, or and you took. Tense isn't that important in Hebrew. It's only important in English. Shivyo. What's the root of this word? Shivyo.
The same.
the same.
The
The
same.
same.
The same.
Shin bet
Mhm.
There it is again.
yot.
Shvi is captivity,
Yeah.
and vishavita, and you will take captive. His captivity.
Take.
So in English, it sounds a little clunky or redundant to say, take captive his captivity.
Mhm.
In
So
Hebrew, it's poetic.
Mhm.
So look out for things like that. And all right, what I'd like to do is jump forward to chapter 22, which I believe is poor whoever's going to be reading next, because you were probably expecting verse 2. Is this it right here? Lo tirei et shor. Yeah. Who would like to read? I saw some hands up and now I don't. Who wants to read?
I can do.
Okay, Thomas,
Okay.
go ahead and read.
Okay. לא, לא תראה את שור אחיך או את שאור נדחים, yes, שאור, נדחים והתעלמת מהם השיבם לאחיך.
Good. I'll read through one time and then we'll kind of process it. Lo tir'e et shor אחיך, או את שיו, נידחים, והתעלמת מהם. השב, תשיבם לאחיך. Right. So we know that lo is not. We learned that tav means you will. What's the root of this word?
Resh Aleph
Aleph.
He. Yod. Resh Aleph Yod or Resh Aleph He.
Arguably resh aleph yod. In the dictionary, it's resh
Ah.
aleph hey, of course. Ra'ah, to see. You shall not see or look at, look upon.
Mhm.
Et is a
Definite.
dum. Direct object
Object
marker.
marker.
So it's what's being seen. It's receiving the action of the verb. Don't see what? Et shor. The ox, or yeah, I guess ox is the best way to translate it. Achicha.
Your brother.
Your brother.
Mhm. Good. And because there's a yod, it means it's plural, right?
Nope.
Yes.
Oh.
I'm getting mixed signals. Some are saying yes and some are saying no. Well, we can look at the translation and see that they left off the yes.
Mm.
So why did the translator do this? Well, because achicha is one of those words that's really frustrating. It originally had a third root letter of either yod or vav, or both, depending on what time period it comes from, and it pretty much dropped off so that all we know it as is ach.
Ah.
Even though it used to be achu, and in other places
Ahu.
achi,
Ahi.
and so the yod is being included here because it was originally part of the root. And then cha says it's yours. Well, wait a second. If there's already a yod on the singular form, then how would you say your brothers?
Achecha.
Nehem.
Mm.
Very good.
Okay.
Achecha, like this, all it does is change the vowels around. It probably should have included two yods here, but ink was expensive, paper was expensive, scribes are expensive. So rather than writing two letters, you just write one. And ultimately, it's the same consonants. And the only way you know the difference before vowels are invented is context.
Mm. Yes.
Here, it doesn't make sense that you would find an ox that belongs to two of your brothers. It's probably belonging to one brother. So that's how the vowel pointing is showing up. O et. So this is something else that can be seen. Seyo. Is this a consonantal yod or a vowel yod?
That could be plural, so it could be a vowel.
Mm.
Consonant.
A vowel.
In
Yes.
Hebrew, every syllable is supposed to start with a consonant. So if I had to divide this into syllables, I would divide it right here and have se, yo. It is true that in Hebrew, we can often get a tsere with the following yod, and we call that a mater lectionis. But here it appears that the yod is actually part of the root and it's consonantal. Did the word se used to have three roots? I don't know. That's hard to tell. I would like to think it did, but I just have no way to prove it. So we only see two root letters, a sin and a yod. And in fact, in the absolute form, we don't even get to see the yod, do we? It's just going to be se. But that's pretty typical of these lamed yod or final yod words, whether it's a verb like ra'ah, or whether it's a noun like se. We typically lose that yod if it's the last letter of the word. Shvi, what we saw in the previous verse, is a notable example. Shvi. Actually, pri is another good example. Fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Nidachim. Nidachim. Whew. This is, what am I looking at? Nidachim. Help me out here. What form is this? What root does it
Nifal?
have? Okay. Defend your position.
It
Why is it
starts with the
nifal?
noon,
Starts with a noon.
Nif'al and
and it has the ah sound in it.
Can I
Yeah.
offer a different way to attack this word? Can I offer a different way to approach this? There's an im on the end.
Participle.
Very good. So it has to be some kind of an adjective or substantive,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
means it's a participle. So what participle has the sound? A nifal.
Nifal.
Exactly.
Yes,
It's going to have a chirik there and a kamatz there. And only trouble is we have a root letter missing.
Mm.
That's okay. It's inside of the dagesh. What do you suppose is missing?
Chocolate.
A noon?
Another noon?
I would argue that it's a noon, dalet, chet, and if we wanted to double check, we could go to some Bible software and it would tell us what the root is. I would doubt that it's a dalet because there are so few roots that have the
And
first, second
okay.
root letters the same, but there are lots of them that have, for example, the second and third root letters are the same. So just a matter of probability, I'd say it's probably a missing noon, nadach. So it should have been nin dachim, but we lost the noon. Nidachim. So this is plural. Why? Well, because se and ox, or se and shol, I guess put those two things together and they're plural.
Yeah.
So here's yet another example of how the grammatical numbers not agreeing. Earlier we saw oyevim, oyevecha, plural, enemies, going with o, him. Now we see a singular, either an ox or a sheep, being paired with nidachim, plural. Gosh, these Hebrews can't figure out grammar. Vehit alamta. What is ta?
Second masculine is singular.
You did it.
Oh,
You did it.
You did it. And what is hit?
Pilot pala.
Hit pa'el. So some kind of a reflexive or reciprocal action. And so what's the root?
Alam.
Alam.
Mhm.
Is that the same as olam or ne'elam?
Ne'elam.
Yes.
Both.
Disappear.
What is ne'elam?
Disappear.
To disappear.
Here
And what is olam?
forever.
Forever.
Either forever or even the world or the universe or something like that. And it's basically as far as you can see to a vanishing point. So it's still related to disappearing. Ne'elam is vanish. Olam is as far as you can see. And hit alam or hit alim means you're doing it to yourself. Huh? It means you're ignoring. You're making yourself vanish from the situation. Oh, look, an ox or a sheep of my brother. Bye, I wasn't here. It says, don't do that. Lo tir'e vehitalamta mehem. Don't hide yourself from them. Hashev tishivem.
Sure.
Hashev tishivem. Are these the same root?
Yeah.
Yes.
We can tell from the translation
Endemic.
absolutely nothing. Right? The translation doesn't help us at all. So we'll have to use our brains on this one. What is hashev?
To return.
Oh, I see.
True.
So can you break it up for me? What form is this? What kind of verb is this?
Some kind of imperative.
Oh, you're so close.
I
So
know.
close.
Adjussive? Is it adjussive?
Now you're getting colder. Okay, so remember that both the imperative and the infinitive absolute look the same.
Can you say that again, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, at least of this hifial form, the imperative form, hey, you, return that thing, is the same as the absolute infinitive, to return, which is usually used for emphasis, right? This is an infinitive absolute. How do I know? Because the same finite form instead of an infinitive form.
Oh,
Infinitive, remember an infinitive is often translated as to do something, like to return. The better definition of it is that you don't necessarily know, it doesn't have a built-in subject or tense. It's just the action. If I said to walk, you'd be like, who? When? What are you talking about? But if I said, I like to walk, all of a sudden you're like, oh, the words I like tell me who's doing the walking. So when you see something like this next to a finite or conjugated verb, you can be certain that it's an infinitive absolute, and its purpose is simply to add emphasis. So I would translate this not as to return, but almost like certainly you shall return them, even though the word certainly isn't there. In Hebrew, it's to return, you shall return them. And that repetition in Hebrew is the force behind the certainly that we would use in English. Or returning, you shall return them. So here's that tav again, you shall. M is a pronominal suffix that refers to them, 3 MP. Them who? Well, remember the im, it's referring to the shor and the se. You shall return them. Well, why is there a hirik yod? Is that part of the root?
possibly.
Fair. It could
PI?
possibly. The only problem is that we don't, well, that's not a true statement. Don't say that. Hif eel is the answer.
If
We had a hey over here,
Restaurant, yeah.
and we had a what's called an apocopated form, which means instead of a full hirik yod, it loses the mater lectionis letter, the yod, and just gets a tsere instead. Remember that hirik yod and tsere, they originally come from the same vowel. At the risk of sounding repetitive, remember that all Semitic languages had 3 vowels, a, I, u. It was from E that we get E vowels, and it was from U that we get O vowels, except for the ones that are aw, and they produce an O vowel too. Anyway, from 3 vowels, we get 5. So a tzere and a hirik yod are essentially the same class of vowel, if you will. And that's why I put them together. No, I don't. I put them next to each other. Anyway, they are next to each other. These are next to each other, but I digress. So in your absolute infinitive form and in your imperative, you're going to lose that hirik yod and just get a tzere instead. Shorter. Great. So the hirik yod here is also because of hifil. Over here, we lost the hirik yod, and over here, we lost the hey, but at least we still have some indication of what binyan it is. So you shall cause to return, or sorry, you shall cause them to return, I guess is literally, or you shall bring them back. Certainly. To where? Le achicha, to your brother, or countryman, if you prefer. All right, questions on this before we move on to the next reader?
I think the question I have is this: when you are looking at this whole context of the plural of your brother and your countrymen, I think the whole point is that it's not like your singular brother, like it's not my baby brother James over here, but my countrymen. We are to think of ourselves not only as individuals, but as one country, one group, one people. And so
Fantastic.
it's done to my one person, it's done to me. So if I
Fantastic.
did it to him, it's like I'm doing it to myself.
Fantastic. Absolutely.
That's probably why that's why the plural stuff kind of goes in there, because it's not, don't limit yourself to one guy. It's all of us.
How about the singular you form up here? Is this to say that only a singular man is being spoken to here? No, it's the entire nation of Israel. It's the general you. We're speaking to each and every single one of you about your brother, which includes him and him and him and her and them.
Mm.
Very, very good.
Yeah. It's the
Any other
same
questions?
like one body, or it's the
Mhm.
same like one body. You are one man, or that's
If-
written in Old Testament. One man in the
When I went
thinking of Israel.
when I
You
went
are
to
one.
Israel, there was a very, I'm currently not in Israel, in case anybody didn't know, but when I was in Israel, it was amazing to me to see how everybody treats everybody like family.
Mhm.
I'd never seen it before outside of Israel. And then all of a sudden in Israel, I mean, I was on a flight coming back to the States to visit from Israel, and there was a big family there, and they had too many children to be able to gather all of their belongings and watch their children. So they didn't know me from Adam, but they said, "Hey, could you watch our kids while we move our stuff?" What? You never say, I mean, what if I were a terrible person? But that's just the way it is. Hey, you fit a profile. You look like family. I want you to watch my kids while I move my stuff. I'm like, I'm honored. Same thing happened at at the green belt, sitting there watching a movie with my friends on the laptop. And a runner stops by and says, "Hey, could you watch my phone while I go running?" And then drops it off and keeps running.
Mhm.
Just like if you dropped it off with your brother or your sister. It's fantastic to see that kind of mentality where everyone is family.
It
Now
gives
you have
every
to watch the
grandmother,
race.
it
Cheryl?
gives every grandmother in Israel the right to tell anybody how to take care of their baby too.
Oh, you better believe it. A friend of mine got pulled over. She was delivering some charity during the pandemic hysteria,
Mm.
and she said, "Who's your mother?" He went, "Never mind, bye." The officer just let her go. It's like, because she said, "Who's your mother? Why would you do this?" Oh, it's great stuff. All right, Valan, it looks like you want to read next. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
It's all yours. Go right ahead.
Okay, let's see what I can do here. Reim, lo, crown orb, hey, I'm not sure about that.
This thing right here is your
Okay.
cancellation mark, so it's only a chirik.
Ahika, a leka, lay low, velo, ye da tall, va sa tall, ow, tor, talk, Beitaka, Ve Ya Im Mak Im Ka Aud Aud Aud
Mm-hmm.
uh I'm not sure if that's a Dalit or not.
It is. It is.
Oh,
It
okay.
is. Sorry if the text is. Sorry if the font is hard to read.
Okay. Day Rosh
Mm-hmm.
Ahika or Tor Ve Hash She Vorto Lu.
No, exactly. All right. So I've put in the syllable division lines so that as we're reading through, our brains can stop on each of those syllables and turn big problems into small ones. Let me read through it one time, even though Voldani did a very good job. Let me go ahead and read through, follow along. V'im lo karov achicha elecha v'lo yada'to va'asafto el toch beitecha v'haya עמך עד דרוש אחיך אותו, והשבותו לו. All right, questions on pronunciation yet so far? If you all haven't noticed, I'm of the opinion that whenever you see a reduced vowel, it either starts the next syllable or ends the syllable. Right? We think of schwa as ending a syllable. Well, yeah, but what if a guttural falls there?
Mhm.
Am I going to put a schwa on aleph? Usually not. If this were any other letter, I would just put a schwa right there, but not an aleph. So that's why I'll say, for example, this is one syllable, and this is one syllable. It should have been a schwa, but there's a guttural. That should have been a schwa, but it's a guttural. This
Mhm.
is like a consonant cluster at the beginning of the syllable. Anyway, I digress. Let's pick this thing apart. Ve'im lo karov achicha. Is this an infinitive absolute? Okay, it's a trick question because infinitive absolutes do have an a-o pattern, right? If I wanted to say to guard, it would be sha mor. Same pattern. But no, this is not, well, how do I say this? We have a lot of adjectives that have an a-o pattern as well, particularly colors or adjectives of distance. Like, how do you say far away?
Oak.
Rachok, same pattern. How do you
Okay.
say red?
Adon.
Adon.
Adom.
Adom.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody know the color green?
Yarok.
Ya.
Yarok. Yeah.
Ro. Exactly. So all of these adjectives have the same pattern as an infinitive absolute. So is this an infinitive absolute? I would say no, because it's describing your brother. It's an adjective. Im lo karov achicha, if not near is your brother. Elecha, strange that it has to him when it should be to you, right? Cha is you. Velo yedato. Uh-oh. What's O at the end of this?
His.
His.
You
Is?
It.
Yeah. It could be his or him, depending on how it's being
him.
used.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
an
yeah.
object referring to him. So
Yeah,
what
him,
is
yes.
yada? Well, it's a verb. So maybe we'll put him on there. Yadat.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. What is this supposed to be? Well, it's supposed to be yadata,
Yeah, that it's
like
not
you.
difficult to pronounce.
It should be yadata, but because of the vav on the end, it pulls that ah vowel into an o.
Yeah, it's very difficult, yes.
So that means we have to try and figure out, is this you feminine or you masculine, or is it some other tav? And because of the context, we know it's you masculine because of the cha right here and right here.
Yes.
So it's probably yadata, you have known, oh, him. Well, lo yadato, you do not know him. Ve'asafto, same thing. It should be ve'asaftao, and you shall gather or bring el toch betecha. Toch is a root that means to be in the middle or midst of. So into the midst of your house. Vehaya, and he was, or and he will be, the animal. Imcha. What's the root of im?
It. It.
Im is with.
Yeah, what's the root
It.
of the im that means with? I don't know. I never thought about it. Well, it's an
It's the same
ein.
like im people or nation. It's the same.
Exactly. It's
Goyim.
actually the exact same root as and because both im and both have to do with togetherness. What is an
Yes.
but a bunch of people who are together, and what is im except putting something together?
Mhm.
So imcha with you is ein mem mem, same as and that's why there's a dagesh in the mem.
Mhm.
Ad drosh achicha. Ad until drosh. Ooh.
Darash,
I want
seek.
to ask what kind of a word this is. What part of speech is this? Drosh.
Ach, oh, that is construct.
Very
With
good.
achicha?
Drosh is in construct with achicha, so that tells us that drosh is some kind of substantive, either an
Yeah.
adjective or a noun.
Mhm.
But darash is a verb. Well,
Yeah.
what kind of a verbal form is a noun?
Pronoun.
A pronoun.
No, stop it. A verbal form that's a noun is your infinitive. Infinitives are basically nouns that describe an action. Like running is great. I love running.
Mhm.
I find running to be a very trying experience or something like that. I'm using it as a noun, even though it's describing an action. Very,
Okay.
very frustrating. So drosh achicha would be the noun of seeking that belongs to or of your brother. It's an infinitive construct.
Is that the same as a participle? Like-
No.
Running, you said running, like running is a participle or
Oh,
I'm-
I see what you're doing there. Yes, 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 yes. Okay. This does require a little bit of explanation. In English, no, let me start with the Hebrew. In Hebrew, I can say dorsho.
Mhm.
Dorsho is his act of doing the action of darash, right?
Mhm.
But if we call this an infinitive construct, then that means if I'm going to translate it into English, it should be something like his to seek. Well, that's clunky. His
Sein.
to seek, his action of exactly seeking. So when we use that ing, it's got two uses. One of them is as a participle, some sort of ongoing action, but it also will invariably be used for this infinitive just because it's impossible to translate dorsho literally is
Mhm.
to seek. So this will include the infinitive construct.
Okay.
But that was a great question. Excellent question, Cheryl. Drosh achicha, the seeking of your brother, oto. So this is a direct object marker referring back to that action. But wait, it was a noun. I know. You can still have a noun representing a verb that still takes a direct object marker. It's so cool how Hebrew works. Oto, the animal. V'hashevota, excuse me. Oh, why? It should be, yeah, it should be. Okay. V'hashevoto, there's an O, 3ms. Why is there a tav?
Plural.
The oat? Like oat, the feminine plural oat?
Yeah.
It's the same like before with shell.
Very good. Thomas hit the nail on the head.
Root. It's
Okay,
the same root.
so this is the same root as we saw earlier with hashev
Mhm.
and teshivem, right? Teshivem. It's the root is still shuv, and the h at the beginning is he feel, I guess, right?
Mhm.
So it's he
Yeah.
feel. So
Yeah.
what? I guess it would also. Well, what kind of a he feel? Is it a um?
Vekatai?
Very good. It's vekatal. There's a vav at the front, and this tav represents the katal to
And the
ms.
object.
Same as we saw earlier with here and
Okay.
here.
Makes sense.
By putting the O on the end, we lost the
Mhm.
ta. How frustrating.
Yeah.
So why is this O here? If any of you can figure out the answer to that question, I want you to let me know. I've studied this long and hard. There is no other Semitic language that inserts an O connecting vowel into these kinds of verbs. Essentially, this is how it works. In Hebrew, if you have a verb that has a hollow second root letter, meaning there's a yod or a vav
Mhm.
in the second root letter, like shir or
Mhm.
bo.
Yeah.
So anytime it has a hollow root letter,
Mhm.
or if it has the same second and third root letters, like savav or
Yes.
shamam.
Mhm.
These two categories behave this way. They put an O in there.
Okay. Yes.
And how exactly it happened like that in Hebrew, but none of the other Semitic languages is baffling, and I have found no good answer for it. And so we just have to accept it and move on with life. So
Mhm.
this is a vekatal
I like Jared.
kefil 2ms with a 3ms suffix
Yes.
and a weird O vowel right there. Oy,
Mm.
boy. And you shall restore it to him, your brother.
So when we're thinking about this, how, we're breaking it all down and where the vowels and everything goes in the construction and the construct of the language. I mean, it had to be very complicated for the Masoretes to try to put this all together too. I mean, maybe it's bad for us, but maybe it was really bad for them.
There were multiple there were multiple competing vowel pointing systems, and the Tiberian one is the one that ultimately won out. But besides that, the vowel pointing system that we see in our Bibles used to be pronounced a little bit differently back in the 1100s than it does today. So
Right.
that adds another layer or element of frustration and confusion. Hey, languages change over time. And so by the time we're in the 21st century reading Hebrew, there's just upon layer of changes, tweaks, pronunciation differences. So almost anyone who studies Hebrew is like, man, it's a complicated language. Of course it is. It's how old? It's
5,000-6,000 years.
3,500 full five. Yeah, let's just be conservative and call it 3,500 years old. It's probably every bit of 5,000 years old, going all the way back to Tower of Babel. Well, I guess technically that would be about 4,600 years ago, based on the chronology in the Bible. But I digress. And all right, any comments or questions before we move on to next reader?
Just a bit of a dumb
Yes.
question, but
Cheryl.
how many of Masoretes were there doing this? And like, I'm just trying to picture it. Like, were there crowds of them and then they'd come together with representatives, or like how many were there?
By and large, if I remember correctly, there was either one or two families that
Wow.
were in charge of what ultimately became scribal schools. And so it's really not, how do I say this? For most of recorded history, most people don't have books of their own, right? They don't have copies of their own of whatever text. And what the Masoretes did is they kind of got together and as one or two families and came up with this whole system. And what does the word Masoretic even mean? What is Masar or
I think you told us this once.
possibly. Masar means to pass along.
So let's say.
To pass along. It's not the same as Musar, but masar means to pass along. So they were simply taking a tradition of reading the text that they had received and passed it on to the rest of the known world by inserting all these vowel points. Did they get some things wrong? Sure. In fact, there are places where they purposely wrote in the wrong thing simply because that's what the previous manuscript had, and they didn't want to change it, even though the previous one was an error. It's fascinating. It's a very fascinating study. But the Masoretic scribes did so much good. I can hardly say anything bad about them for the few times that they did get something wrong.
Were they as meticulous as the legend of the Essenes?
Come again? What about the legend of the Essenes?
Were they as meticulous like the Essenes? You know, the Essenes, they, when you read the traditions about them, they bathed 7 times a day and they did all these things. They fasted often just to keep pure, just so they can keep the text, you know, everything they wrote pure.
Yeah, like the Masoretes, for example, would wash their hands before and after every time they would write God's name, and that shows up 6,800 times in the Bible. That just kind of paints a portrait for how serious and dedicated they were. They would count the number of rows and excuse me, they would count the number of letters in a row to make sure that it was the same as the previous copy. Very, very, very meticulous. Extraordinarily meticulous. I would even say, at least as far as the textual evidence goes, more meticulous than the Essenes.
Okay.
What? Well, because the Essenes, when they were writing the text of the Hebrew Bible, they were freely inserting yods and vavs and alepphs in order to represent vowels. It was almost like um, an early form of vowel pointing, including yods and vavs and alepphs where they really don't belong in order to let the reader know, hey, there's a vowel here. So the Masoretes were much more meticulous about not adding or detracting anything from the text. But anyway, any other questions on this before we move on? Frage?
One question. Yes. I read yesterday, Im is people or nation, and the root is Amam, and that means in my German Bible or the Hebrew translation, darken or dark.
Yes. Yes.
Why?
Okay.
Because the nation, okay, I see this word, it's the first time that Eve take the fruit in first Genesis 3.
Well, because it's the word im, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've read what you've read, but
Amam. In Germany is
people?
Amam, dark and dark.
Right. Okay, so I've heard the definition before that it has to do with darkening. The idea is that when you have a crowd of people in the valley or on the mountain, it looks like a big dark spot of people.
Yes.
I've heard that before, and I have nothing against it, except it doesn't work quite as well to say that im with and amam people are the same root. So I prefer just going with even if it's not 100% correct, I would of course I would ask, how do you know that it has to do with amam darkening? But they have an answer, I have an answer, and in the end, we're just going to have to remember that is people, and it has something to do with darkening the side of a mountain with your presence.
That's the same thoughts I have yesterday when I see many people in a big distance. You can see it.
Yeah,
It's a
absolutely.
color.
All right, Jesse, would you like to read next?
Yeah.
All right, all yours.
לכן תעשה לך מורל, וכן תעשה לשמלתו, והן תעשה לכל אבדת אחיך אשר תאבד ממנו ומצאתה לא תוכל להתעלם.
Very good. V'chen תעשה לחמורו, וכן תעשה לשמלתו, וכן תעשה לכל אבדת אחיך, אשר תאבד ממנו, ומצתך לא תוכל להתעלם. Ken is the modern Hebrew word for
Yes.
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 In the Bible, the root from which Ken comes means what? Either, I think it's kun. No? Like tachin or hechin. No? Okay. It means to establish. When we say ken or chen, we're essentially saying that much is established. True. Yes. So what we just talked about earlier, the chen, what was already established, ta'aseh lachamoro, you shall do to chamoro. Is this definite or indefinite? Let me reword the question.
Definite.
Let me reword the question. Is there a definite article at the front of this word?
Yes.
It's
You walked right into the trap. See, the original question I asked was, is this definite? And I realized in my mind, I'm not going to get anybody like that because there's an O on the end. Of course it's going to be definite. It's not just a donkey, it's his. But then I reformatted my question to ask whether this is the definite article. And there, I'm afraid the
it
answer is
is
no.
no.
So why do we have a patach here? What should have been there?
And have a shavar in the beginning with
Fantastic. What do we expect to be there? A shva, l. But we can't have two reduced vowels at the beginning of a word.
mhm.
So Hebrew fixes the first shva and turns it into a full vowel, usually a chirik, unless there's a guttural to mess up the vowels. Then it's going to vowel harmonize with that reduced vowel, hence lacha.
Laha.
We see the same thing happening here with ta'ase. It should have been chirik shva. But the ayin goes and takes a reduced vowel instead, thereby causing the first one to also take a patach. You'll typically see these reduced vowels in harmony with the surrounding vowels. A goes with a, e goes with e, o goes with o, so on and so forth. V'chen ta'aseh lachamoro, chamor, his donkey. V'chen ta'aseh lesimlato. Does anyone know what a simla is in modern Hebrew?
It's a dress.
The dress.
The dress.
I hope your brother does not have a dress. In fact, we get to see, for example, like the king's royal garment is also called a simla. And we'll even see this word with swapped letters occasionally, salma, like this. So simla, salma, it's not a woman's dress. That came later. Lesimlato, his garment or outer garment maybe. V'chen ta'aseh, and you shall do, lechol avedat achicha. What's the root of avedat?
Avad.
Avad with an
Vad.
ayin or aleph?
Aleph.
Of course, there's an aleph. What is avad with an ayin?
To work.
Yeah, it's irrelevant. It's not written here. It means to work. But here with an aleph, avad or aved means to go missing, to perish. So if we're looking at a noun with a feminine suffix, we're talking about some sort of abstract noun having to do with lost. A lost thing of achicha, your brother. Asher tovad. Hey, there's the same root, which, uh-oh, this is problematic. Tovad? Talk about person gender number disagreement. Your brother is 3ms. Tovad is not 3ms. What's going on here? If anything, Tovad means you have lost or she has lost.
Mhm.
What gives?
How is
Not
it
he
he
has,
lost?
Okay, I heard a couple people saying, William, what'd you say?
How is it translated he has lost?
Well, that's because the translator scratched his head, said, well, it can't be she or you, so I'm going to change it to
Yeah.
he. So why did he take that liberty? Why did the translator
It's
do
about
that?
your brother.
Yeah, I mean, the context seems to say that the brother's the one that lost it. Is there anything that we could do differently with the vowels here to fix this problem without mistranslating that tav? What if the Masorets made a mistake?
I'm actually looking at the phrase separations.
Yeah, what
Because
do you
the
mean?
first, well, you've got man shalt thou do with his ass, separation, and thou
Mm-hmm.
shalt do with his raiment, separation.
Yep.
Now you have a parallelism. And with the lost things of thy brother which hath lost. So you have
Okay.
lost and lost. So the first two separations set up the context for the message, which the message doesn't begin until the third phrase.
Okay. It still doesn't solve the problem, though. Tav means either you or she.
Mhm.
Is it
Let me
possible that
put
since he's speaking to like the whole nation, he's talking about the whole nation of the Israeli people, that he's saying, that this person may have lost. It doesn't matter who it is. They lost it. It's part of the nation. So it's the same.
Look, I'm going to give you an A. I'm going to give you an A+ for creativity. I like it. I wonder though if the tav is supposed to be feminine, referring back to her,
Mhm.
in
That's
which
true.
case this verb should be passive. She
Mhm.
was lost. Okay, so I'm trying not to do violence to the text here. I don't like doing that, but I see a problem and I'm wondering, what are my options? What are the possibilities? Remember that
Mhm.
all these vowel pointings came way later, 7th to 11th century. So in my humble opinion, if I see a problem with the vowel points, instead of hitting my head against the wall and trying to come up with a creative solution, I'm going to be like, what if the vowel points need to be changed a little bit? I don't like doing that. But when there's a big problem, you got to do something, right? Well, okay. So what if this is a feminine tav? She has been lost. What binyan should this be in order to
Mhm.
make that happen? Right now it's a kal, which means
Yikta.
she is lost or she will be lost.
Mhm. Mhm.
I just had an apostrophe. No, I'm kidding. An epiphany. What if we leave it the same? She will have been lost.
Mm.
Okay.
Now it can still refer back to the lost thing, and we don't have to fix anything, right? Because a yiktol can refer to an incompleted action. Let's see. She will be lost in the future because it hasn't happened. You haven't found it yet, but when you do find it, and
Mhm.
this item will be lost, mimenu. Now this is another.
Oh,
So this is
That's
okay. So
thing.
there's a pretty good solution, right? I'm happy with that. Is everyone else happy
Mhm.
with that?
I
Okay.
see. You're a genius. I got it. I see
What
it.
do we do with this then? Mimenu. What's the
Man.
meaning of mimenu? By the way, this doesn't help you.
Who is darkish in the noon is
Thomas, you're
at the
so
end.
smart. You're so smart. Absolutely.
Yeah,
We've got
that's the
a
same
who.
problem. We have the
We've got
same
a
problem
we've got a
now.
who at the end. What we have here is a reduplication of min
Min.
who, and see if I can fit this in here. There we go. Min who. This noon assimilates into that mem. This hey assimilates into that noon, and you basically get a bunch of strong dageshes. So mimenu from him. So she will be lost from him, your brother. Ah, well, that solves the problem. So evidently this translator wasn't the brightest bulb on the tree, or no, how do you say that? Sharpest tool in the shed. And so he just kind of cheated and said he lost it. Umtsata.
Yeah.
See, if we would have
But that's
just
all
read
right.
if we would have just read the next word, we would have solved all this problem a whole lot sooner. What's
Yeah.
her, referring back to her.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Which means that also has to be her. Okay, whatever.
With a
Umatsata.
T.
Okay, good. So here we have an sound that's performing originally two different purposes, but later on it only serves one. What do I mean by that? Ta is to MSU. But is originally, well, how do I say this? No, it's okay. So originally it would be ha, but then it gets simplified to whatever, is 3FS. So we have an here and an here, and they collapse down into one which is a lot better than what we saw earlier, where the went missing because of the O.
Mhm.
Lo tuchal. Oh, there's a tav again. Must be she, right?
Mhm. Tuchal is passive.
It's
What?
no, it's you. It's you.
It's you. It's got to be you. So we went from she back to you. We started with you
Mhm.
and you and you. Then it seems that we jumped to she and she. And now we're back to you simply because of the context. You shall do it with this. You shall do it with that. You shall do it with every lost thing feminine that is your brother's, which she will be lost from him, and you shall find her. So there's the 2ms. There's a 2ms. And you shall be able not lehitalem. You shall not be able to disappear, ignore. Lehitalem in modern Hebrew means to ignore something, means to make yourself scarce. All right, questions?
Is tuchal passive?
No. Tuchal is from the root
Tuchal, no.
vav kaf lamed. It is a kal yiktol, and
Mhm.
the vav did not turn into a yod.
Mm.
Think of other words like
Like original form or
yeah, I'm
what?
thinking of like original yods, which is really hard to T, well, no, that's a different one. That's he feel. Can somebody think of an no, that's different too. Yishav, yeah,
Tuchal.
I can't think of one. I'm so sorry. The number of original pay yod verbs is very small. Most of them were originally a vav.
Mhm.
Man, why can't I think of one? I want to say Yashar, but I don't think it is. Anyway. Lishon. To sleep, right? Like
Mhm.
Tishan.
Tishan.
Tishan means you will sleep. So it preserves an original yod. But here we have an original vav preserved. Okay. Sorry, were there any other questions before we move on? Cheryl, would you like to read?
Okay. לא תראה את חמור אחיך או שורו נפילים,
Noflim.
נופלים בדרך והתעלמת, mihem, hakem, takim imo.
There's a lot of repetition in this verse, so most of this will be pretty easy. Lo tir'eh et chamor achicha. You shall not see or look upon the donkey of your brother. O shoro nofalim baderech. Or his ox, the one that is, or the ones that are falling, baderech, along the way. Vehitalamta, and you hide yourself or ignore mehem, from them. Hakem takim imo.
Yeah.
All right, so we've seen this before with the hashev tishivim. We just don't have a pronominal suffix now, but it's the same construction. We have a infinitive absolute
Mm.
and a yiktol verb.
Yeah.
Lifting up, you shall lift up. Amo, with him. Okay, so if the donkey or the ox has fallen down and he has a cart on him that's loaded down, and now the animal is unable to stand up because of the load, you're going to go over to your brother and help lift that cart so the animal can get back on his feet and then continue doing the work that that needs to be done. You don't just look at him and say, "Oh, well, I have places to go, people to see, things to do. Sorry, I can't help." No, don't. Hit them. Why is the stress here instead of here?
So
Hitalamta.
Vekata.
Yeah, because it's vekatal. What other person, gender, number besides you will shift the stress over?
First person singular.
First person, yes.
First common singular. Exactly. So if I will do it or you will do it, then the stress moves over. And not even always. There are plenty of places where it's a vekatal and the stress doesn't move over. Again, how frustrating. All right. Next verse. Who wants to read? Eileen, do you want to read?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
All yours. Go ahead.
Lo ahi ahi he. No.
Lo ye.
Lo i he. Uh, ka i
Kli.
kli go 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 be er go be er
Gever. Gever.
gever al isha
All right.
velo ila veif
Yilbash.
li is li bash i
Gever.
gever si
Break it up. Sim. Lat.
simla isha i at o albetot
To avat.
to avat Adonai al no
Elo.
Elohai
Elohecha.
o Eloheja kol al isha
There's an O there. Ose.
o osei al ha
There's two dots there. What sound do they make? A.
Leja.
That's right. Okay, good. The hey at the end is just a vowel. Ele. Ele.
Ele.
It's frustrating when a mater lectionis is there. It's not a consonant. It's not an H sound. It's just sitting there as a vowel, representing the vowel that wasn't written there until the 7th century. Oy. I'll read.
Okay.
By the way, excellent reading. Thank you so much. Let me read one through.
You're
Once
welcome.
through. Lo yihye chli gever al isha velo yilbash gever simlat isha ki to'avat Adonai Elohecha kol oseh ele. Clear screen. There we go. I can turn this back on. Good. Lo yeh, there shall not be. Kli gever. What's kli? Probably one of the most versatile words in Hebrew. It's a vessel.
Vessel, yeah.
It can be a pot. It can be a tool. It can be an instrument. It can be a dagger. It can be so many different things. Okay, so some sort of an apparatus of a gever. Do you all recognize this verse yet in the English?
A man shall not wear anything that pertains to a woman. A man shall not put on a woman's garment, and a woman shall not wear anything that pertains to a man.
In most translations, you'll say a man is not to wear a woman is not to wear how to hang it. Blah, 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 blah. A man shall not wear. No, stop. A men's garment shall not be upon a woman, and a man shall not wear the clothes of or something like that. They basically turn this verse into men don't wear women's clothing, women don't wear men's clothing. Case closed. I'm sorry, that's not quite what I see here. Kli gever.
Mm-hmm.
What's kli gever? Is that his clothes?
Mm-hmm.
Or is that his armor, his weapon, his tools, his gadgets, his gear? I mean, you think about the role of a man originally, like I would say originally, but you know, in the Bible, the role of the man is protector. Why? Because God made men big and stupid, so that we can go up and protect the family. Whereas the woman is at home making everything nice and neat and training the children in the way they ought to go, or more or less. And so the man has gear.
Yeah.
And this is saying, it shall not be upon the women. Hey, lady, that's the man's job. What are you doing? So this verse, right? I know. Look, this is a highly politicized issue where it's like, oh, men and women are equal. We have equal rights, equal opportunity, equal. And I'm like, men's sports versus women's sports. Anybody? I mean, I love women. I married one. I have daughters. Women are great, but I can't do what a woman can do. And guess what? Women can't do everything I can do, and it's okay.
I don't want my daughters to go to war.
Exactly. That's kind of what I'm getting at. So when we see all of these women who are pretending to be men going and signing up for war, I'm like, you poor thing.
You have no idea what war is about.
You have no idea. You poor thing. You're going to get slaughtered. Anyway, so when I read this, I see something more like, hey, women, don't take upon yourself the instruments that a man carries. And then we get to see what, the rest of the verse seems to be translated pretty well.
Don't trade places.
He shall not wear simlat isha. Now, this is a woman's dress. I don't care who you are. Simlat isha, the word isha is there. It's definitely a woman's dress. So a man shall not lavash is to wear simlat isha. So it's possible that a simla can be a man's or a woman's, but it's an outer garment. And Men should not be doing that. Women should not be doing that. There are differences. See, there's one God who has all of the attributes of both men and women. And when he created mankind, there's this theory that says originally he created Adam in his image with all of his attributes, and it was only when the Adam had no suitable partner, I guess I could say, helpmeet, if you want to use the King Jimmy. So he
Counterbalance.
split yeah, I like that, counterbalance. So he split the man in two. He split the human in two, male and female. So now we get to see man with all the qualities and the woman with all the qualities. But guess what? You read the Bible, God has both of them. Not only is he called a man of war, he's also called a bird that wants to collect his people under his feathers.
Like the hen.
It's fantastic.
I
Absolutely.
have an observation. It seems to me, since you pointed out this thing about the vessel and then the garment, is that, you know, a woman shouldn't put on the armor or take on the identity as the protector of the man, because she has a distinct role. But the man shouldn't switch roles with her, like putting on a woman's garment, think, oh, I'm going to stay home with the girls. You guys go ahead and go out to fight. So it's
Yeah.
like, you know, be in your role, be who you are.
It reminds me of some of the terrorist leaders that have put on burqas to try to conceal their identity. You spineless, serious, hiding behind innocent people. Oy, woe to you. Ki toavat
Well,
Adonai.
I got a question when you say that. When you say that, because, you know, I mean, I've heard it before, but then when you just said it, this sort of makes sense. In Islam, it's like they're supposed to like cut your head off if you do stuff like that. If you're a man and you put on the garment, they're like to, you know, cut your hands and your head off. So these guys totally go against the Quran just to hide. If they're really brave as soldiers, why not, you know, die with honor like a soldier?
Great question. I'm no
I'm
Quran.
ex-military, so I'm
I'm no Quran expert, but I think that's a fantastic question. Ki toavat Adonai. Toava is a very strong word, an abomination. It is an abomination to the Lord, Elohecha, your God. What is? Kol ose ele. Anyone who does these.
What does
Anyone.
abomination mean? I mean, what does it mean in Hebrew?
Wow, that's a great question too.
And what's the root of the word of the
I think we need to look it up. If I had to guess, I'd say that the root was probably this right here, but you know what? Let's look it up. Let's move over here. Abomination. And it was in Deuteronomy. Scooch this out of the way. What are we in? 22?
22.
Okay, so here we found it. Let me move this over here, clear the screen. All right, what does this dictionary say? This dictionary says
Disgusting.
it comes from, really?
Ritual.
From ta'av. It says it comes from ta'av, to abhor, be able to do abominable, be able. So it's something loathed, abhorred. I would love to see more words that come from that are related to this.
Yeah.
It's summarized in the next chapter, Jared. It's addressed. So right now, what he's doing is breaking down the masculine and feminine individually, and then he summarizes it in Deuteronomy 23:17. He puts the masculine and feminine together as an abomination.
17 right here.
It's really bad. I mean, this is an expletive describing masculine feminine prostitution.
Oy vey. והנה הוא שם עלילות דברים לאמור, לא מצאתי לביתך בתולים, ואלה בתולי ביתי, ופרסה השמלה לפני זקני העיר. Okay, I don't understand your point yet. This is talking about the garments of, spreading forth some sort of garment to show a daughter's virginity. I don't know what that means.
Right. So you have
If a daughter's a virgin and she's and you give her in marriage, there should be blood on the sheets, and then so you would go to the house. If the man's gonna say she's not a virgin, and you go get the sheets, and so show proof. If
Okay.
Because
It's
if he's
another
telling
way
the
of-
truth, if he's telling the truth, he would save the sheets so he can show proof that he's telling the truth. And if he didn't, well, that's kind of suspicious. But it's showing that if she's given to marriage and she's not a virgin, then they knew she was not a virgin and they gave her to him, whatever way. But it's to keep the marriage covenant. That's what.
Sure. I didn't know there was. I have no idea what that means with the token of virginity. I don't know what that means. I don't feel
So-
We were
qualified.
talking about
talking about
abomination.
blood libel. Talking about blood libel.
And what did
So
you say,
in
Jesse?
modern-
I thought we were talking about abomination.
Originally, we were talking about abomination, and let's see. Tim wanted to jump to this verse, so I'm
Right.
not sure what
So
to
what
say.
it's talking about blood libel. So
Okay.
it goes back to the garments, mixed marriages, the accusations that Jews mix blood of Christians in religious rituals. So it has he's bringing the masculine and feminine as basically a form of prostitution in blood libel. It's
Oy vey.
I'm in a manuscript study group, and we just talked about this for about 45 minutes, 2.5 hours before this class.
That's a lot of minutes.
It is-
All right. Who's the next reader?
I can do.
All right, go ahead.
Another question. I?
Yeah, Thomas. You
Okay.
go ahead, Thomas.
Okay. כי יקרא כאן ציפור לפניך בדרך, בדרך בכל עץ או על הארץ, אפרוחים או ביצים, והאם רובצת על האפרוחים או על הביצים לא תיקח, האם על הבנים.
This is a very interesting verse. If you happen to stumble across an edible bird and her eggs, you shall not take both. Don't be cruel. Ki yikare kan tzipor. Yikare, we think of kara as to call, but it's in the nifal. So if it be called, or since, or when it be called, no, it's probably related more to the kufresh yod, kara, to happen. And we see this change between yod and aleph in many places, but here's probably the most famous one. So it's almost like to chance upon. Ki yikare kan tzipor, if you chance upon the nest of a bird, lefanecha, before your face, baderech, in the way, bechol etz, in any tree, o al haaretz, or on the ground, like some large birds will have nests on the ground, right? Efrochim o veitzim. So efroach is a young hatchling, and veitzim, well, that's eggs. Vehaem rovetzet, and she's lying down al haefrochim o al habetzim, lo tikach haem al habanim. Okay, now the Hebrew is probably not 100% translatable across to the English as it is. You shall not take, right? Lo tikach haem,
With
mother, al habanim, like literally sitting on the eggs or the hatchlings.
Torah.
Because what happens if you take the mother bird?
Hatchlings will die.
The babies and eggs die.
Mm.
So according to this verse, if you're hungry and you don't have any food, well, I'm sorry, Miss Little Birdie. I'm going to take either your young or your eggs, but I'm not going to take you so that you can make more eggs later on.
Yes.
Or if you can, just don't take all the eggs. It's moderation. I'm not sure that vegetarianism was necessarily a terribly viable option as it is today. Today, we can live off of carrots and cucumbers if we wanted to,
They
but
were in the desert.
yeah, I mean, if you're in the desert, there's just not a whole lot of food. If you're up in the north, you're going to eat fish, even locusts. It's easier to harvest those things than it is vegetables. However, there were plenty of vegetarians that came from the Qumran community, and John the Baptist was accused of being a Qumranite or an Essene because he stayed away from.
They
Oh,
lived in
that's
the
an interesting
mountains, right?
discussion. Say again?
They lived in the mountains, right?
Well, he lived in the Judean hills, but that's pretty much the locality of the Qumran community.
Yeah.
So there is a theory, I don't know how good it is, but when the New Testament talks about John the Baptist eating locusts and honey, there's a theory that says that locusts is probably referring to the carob plant, because it's in Hebrew, it's called a locust tree. Like in America, there's a locust tree. It's not the same, but carobs are like the fake chocolate. It looks like a seed pod. They're delicious. The spine of the pod, it tastes kind of like honey. And then honey itself, is he eating honey from bees? Maybe they had apiaries back then, or it's referring to the honey of certain fruit that we see in the Bible, such as that of figs or dates.
Dates.
So I don't know, it may be a little bit of a stretch. We don't have the original Hebrew or Aramaic of the New Testament to be able to confirm whether the Greek possibly mistranslated something. But if he ate carobs and figs and dates, then that would almost certainly make him out to be an Essene, especially since he's living in the Judean desert. Especially since we get to see his verbiage lining up very well with the Essene community, like sons of light, sons of darkness, stuff like that. So it's an interesting theory. Maybe, maybe not.
There is a version of the Hebrew gospel. The gospel's in Hebrew. It's a Sephardic website called HebrewGospels.com. I put it in the chat. It's they managed to translate it to English. They have Matthew, Mark, and John. They're working on Luke, and they have from Cochin, India, James, Jude, and Revelation. But it also shows you the Vatican copy print that they found it on, and so if you wanted to look at that might answer some of your questions about John.
So I actually have the manuscript right here that you're referring to. I've been reading.
Okay.
Oh yeah. I've read through Matthew, Revelation, I think Jude. I've looked at parts of the other ones. And while I can agree with you that it's fascinating and that it has certain variants in it that can't be explained with the Greek manuscript family, on the other hand, it reads like a modern Hebrew manuscript, which is to say that if it does come from a different manuscript family, we see that it's kind of updated and modernized over time so that the version that we're reading in the manuscript that Justin and HebrewGospels.com are using are, clearly written sometime in the either medieval times or much later, but it still doesn't account for the variants. So it's an absolutely fascinating study. It's just I don't know how you could prove and say this is the original if it has so many late Hebrew anomalies in it.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. So it's I highly recommend anyone reading it. It's a lot of fun. Of course, there are no vowel pointings, so it's going to be challenging. But it's free and available on their website. And I actually reached out to him and asked him if I could help him out with some stuff, and he wanted to. Well, that's not important.
Yeah, they're
So
having trouble with Luke. They're having a lot of trouble with Luke.
oh man.
Translating.
Well, I look forward to reading it when it comes out. All right. Well, my beautiful daughter came by and told me that dinner is ready and she wants me to please come to dinner. So
All right, Jared.
I think we're going to wrap it up here.
Can I just say one thing? Can I say one thing? Charof in Hebrew is the same word and spelled exactly the same, locust and carob. They're both charov, same word.
There you go. So that's the theory behind the Greek accidentally translating carob as locust. Why would they translate it as locust? Well, because according to the Torah, you can eat locusts. It's kosher. But did he is the question. Well, I don't know. Maybe he ate carob instead. It's hard to know. All right. I hope you all had a wonderful experience today. I highly recommend coming back next week. If anyone wants to donate, please, you're more than welcome to. I'm currently putting together the curriculum, level A curriculum, and it's going to be great, but it's just so slow coming. I have to juggle 3 other jobs while I'm working on it, so it's going to take a little bit more time, but I look forward to when it finally does come out. Next week, we'll get into the next parasha, which is what? Kitavo, isn't it?
Kitavo.
Kitavo.
Oh, yeah, yes.
So see you all then. Same place, same time. Lehitrot v'shalom.
Thank you very much.
Hitrot
Hitrot.
leshalom.
Thank you, Jared.